Welcome to the Steve Reeve Podcast with the best moments from the past week and a few things that didn't make it to air. Monday.
Steve with you, and still just like jazzed about The Last of Us. The first episode that showed up on HBO last night was awesome. It was really, really cool. So cool. And with Alberta on display, I don't know, made it even more special, I guess. At least it did for me. I know that a lot of jobs were created by that. That's also cool. But even just to be able to see the scenery of Alberta, they did build some stuff, but for the most part, a lot of what we saw in that episode, and I'm sure a ton more of what we're going to see as the rest of the series does come out throughout HBO and on Crave for us here in Canada, we're going to see a lot more of Alberta on display. And Pedro Pascal is a big fan of the Alberta scenery. Fun fact, he actually saw the Northern Lights for the very first time while shooting this here in our neck of the woods. And he was talking to CTV at the premiere of the first episode, and down in Hollywood, had this to say about us up here in the north.
I can understand why we ended up shooting the series in Calgary, throughout all of Alberta, really, because there's such a kind of powerful and dynamic physical landscape to Alberta, and we used, the real mountains and the real rivers, the real lakes, and prairies and snow and all of it, and also built these incredible sets, and there was this very beautiful dedication that our crew had, that it did feel Canadian.
No, it feels Canadian. Oh, I don't know. That just makes me feel good. But big thank you, Pedro, for the kind words. And, honorary Canadian, as far as I'm concerned. I don't have the authority to do that, but I'm saying it anyway. The Sony Walkman is coming back. And no, not in the same form as like a few years ago when they did the 40th anniversary of the actual cassette player, and they put it out again, and you could buy it again, and it looked great, and it was really, really cool. Total collector's piece. But no, we're actually talking about in 2023, 2 brand new designs are coming out now. They kind of have the styling of the old, but with the technology of the new, because they're MP3 players and streaming devices, and they claim to have evolved sound. That's what Sony does all the time, I guess. But, I would give it a try. I'm sure it sounds amazing. Speaking of sounding great, Dave Grohl, in a format that you're not going to be able to hear because he's in a new comic book. He's the subject of a new Orbit comic book, and this is from Tidal Wave Productions, and they focus on people who have made a big impact, influencing people in the world, and other musical artists that have been in the previous issues, I guess, of the series. John Lennon, Ozzy Osbourne, we've seen David Bowie, Alice Cooper, and more. Now a brand new one with Foo Fighters frontman Dave Grohl is heading out there, and it should be very interesting to read through.
You're listening to the Steve Reeve Podcast from 100.5 Cruise FM.
Over the weekend, I was trying to think of as many of these as possible, as many examples, but of sayings that we used to say all the time, but now we just don't anymore, right? There's so many of them, and throughout time, there's been endless ones. I'm not really talking about jumping back to Victorian slang. You Apple John? No, within our lifetime, the stuff that I remember being a kid and being so prevalent in TV shows, at school, my older siblings were saying them, all that kind of thing. So talk to the hand is one of the first ones that came to mind for me. Talk to the hand, or, you go girl.
I was thinking, as a group, we could start saying, you go girl, not in a way that's, oh, I'm so cool saying you go girl, but in a way that we're kind of winking at it.
Winking at it, yeah. And what else do we got? Put that in your pipe and smoke it. I hear that in the Dr. Evil voice. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Don't have a cow, man. That's a Bart Simpson thing for sure, but not exclusively. All that in a bag of chips. To the max, bro. To the max. Cruising for a bruising, hang loose, take a chill pill, gag me with a spoon. One of my favorites. I used to do this all the time. Psych! When you're faking somebody out. Here's some bad news. Psych! I got you, right? It's a really great joke. It was back in the day, all right? Before the internet, that was the pinnacle of comedy. So, will you text in 780-715-2789, or will you jump on the comment section and add more sayings that we just don't say anymore?
To the max, Cleo. To the max.
Tuesday.
Here in Canada, our guideline for alcohol consumption has been updated for the first time in about a decade, give or take. Honestly, didn't check exactly when it last happened. And of course, it is a recommendation only, but still, it was something like 15 drinks a week for men and 10 a week for women for low risk category. And now it's down to 2 drinks per week per person regardless. Yeah, you heard that right. 2 drinks per week per person. A lot of people going, that's like dinner. 2 drinks with dinner a night is pretty regular. And whatever works for you. Keyword works, right? Admittedly, I don't drink very much these days, but this just seems a little extremely unextreme, if you get what I mean. Now I do believe that if you struggle, you can't handle this substance or that substance, you be smart as much as possible. Avoid, moderate, and I do wish for more support for those who struggle and can't seem to cap, excessive alcohol consumption and other addictions. But come on, everything in moderation, including moderation, I think. Steve Vai in the news because of the Swiss cheese guitar. So this is a weird story. Back in 1986, in the music video for Yankee Rose with David Lee Roth, this custom-made guitar of Steve Vai's was lost, as in 5-finger discounted, as in stolen from him way back in 1986. It had a weird monkey grip handle. There was like indents where it was, giving him a greater grip, but also the reason that it was kind of called the Swiss cheese guitar. And it was used in that music video, but then gone. Smoke dust, nothing left. Until it was found in the attic of a home in Mexico this very week. Madonna has got a brand new tour coming out that is a 40th anniversary with a big show at the O2 Arena in London. Her original self-titled debut in 1983, and the 35-city celebration tour is going to be kicking off in July, but I don't have the details on every single date just yet, at least none in our area. Pretty sure it's going to be limited mainly to the United States as well as into Europe, but of course, if they do come into Canada, expect Toronto and Vancouver as usual.
Wednesday.
Oh, the times they are a-changin'. It's a little bit strange to me. As a former Fort McMurray Today paperboy back in the day, it's a strange piece of business that they are no longer going to be delivering, nor even printing a hard copy physical edition anymore in the near future. The shift from physical to digital distribution all over print media has already, affected how often it is a print, thing, a print release. But now, as of February 27th specifically, that's going to mark the official end of an era. And a huge shout out to all the journalists who are keeping us in the know right here in our community. And a middle finger still to all of the people on my paper route who wouldn't pay up to a 14-year-old kid. I was trying to buy candy, all right? Let's get some music headlines on the go. Dolly Parton getting us started because of this new rock album that she's been working on for a while. The inspiration came from being nominated for inclusion into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, to which she said, oh, no, I can't do that. I haven't made any rock albums. Then people went, well, why don't you make a rock album? And it's happening, and she's now, after going on an interview to discuss the upcoming, without a date of release album, that's going to be called Rockstar, to reveal some of the people that are contributing. Paul McCartney, Steven Tyler, Stevie Nicks are all on there. Elton John is wanted to appear on the project, though is unconfirmed. She also said that she hoped to reunite Jimmy Page and Robert Plant of Led Zeppelin. They got Mick Jagger as a potential. But they did a cover of a song, even though he wasn't able to actually contribute, and got Pink and Brandi Carlile to join for it. So lots of people that are getting involved in this album, and more to come as we get closer to an actual release date, and maybe more people jumping on to be contributors. Rick Rubin, a man who has had his touch on incredible amount of albums, a producer extraordinaire, but not a musician apparently whatsoever. He just did an interview on 60 Minutes to talk about a new book he's promoting. Creative Act, A Way of Being is the title. This is a guy that's worked with Red Hot Chili Peppers, with The Strokes, with so many different people. And in his own words, he says, I have no technical ability and I know nothing about music. There's people who would then argue that, there's got to be something that's working right. And he says, well, he knows what he likes and what he doesn't like, and he's decisive about what he likes and what he doesn't like. And that is the biggest thing that's contributed to him being a musical producer.
Hey, Alexa, play the Steve Reeve podcast.
We make discoveries all the time. You're learning every day of your life, not just when you're in school, right? What I've learned is that there's this thing called the Danny DeVito test that people on the internet have devised. I really, truly couldn't tell you the origin of this other than the broad answer of the internet. But here's what the Danny DeVito test is for. Oftentimes, characters can seem a little off-putting, but people still just like them a lot. For instance, I'd say the Joker. A lot of people were loving the Joker and the Harley Quinn love dynamic, even though it's totally an abusive relationship and has been since that character of Harley Quinn showed up in the TV show, the animated series back in the 90s. Just as an example. Or, Christian Grey from Shades of Grey. Or the guy from You, who's also pretty creepy, but people go, hey, hang on, he looks good. What about the biopics about actual serial killers, where they've attracticized them up? Zac Efron, for instance. Well, the Danny DeVito test is if you had that same character portrayed in the exact same way, but not by the actual actor, but by Danny DeVito, and you feel like they're a psychopath, they were actually just a psychopath the whole time. Perfect test. I love it.
Thursday.
Watching them clear a little bit of the snow out there in the parking lot below. It's a bit of a morning routine. Yeah, and hearing the brrrr as they go by as well. But, the snow plows, I love to see the snow being cleared no matter what. And I always think about the person behind the machine as well, and the good that they are providing. You know what I mean? Now, one thing that is missing here in the RMWB that I think needs to be corrected is the names for our snowplows and our various, public works equipment. And maybe we do have names and I'm just not aware of it, but I don't think so, ? I tried to look it up just to make sure that I wasn't being crazy, but no, I don't think we do. And I was just reading jealously about the new names for a bunch of snowplows in Edmonton, just down to the south. Now, some of them are very specific to Edmonton, like Connor McBladeit, for instance. Just saying, like, that's the Oilers connection. But there are some that are just absolutely fantastic, like Buzz Ice Clear. For the kids submitted that one for sure. How about Control Salt Delete? That's the name on one of them. Darth Blader. Okay, yeah, it's pretty funny. Fast and Furious. I like the pop culture stuff. Mr. Plow is the best one of them, though. The Simpsons reference for sure. Plowy McPlowface made the list. Yes. And my favorite of all, it's the Big Leplowski. I can't even say it without laughing. It's so good. The Big Leplowski. What are our snowplows named here in the RMWB? I need to know, and if they don't have names, what are we even doing here? Time to talk Megan. So I did see this movie finally, and I loved it. I really enjoyed it. Wasn't like the most amazing horror movie you've ever seen in your entire life, but perfectly capable. A lot of fun. A lot of like the Child's Play Chucky DNA in there, especially the most recent Chucky movie. Not the show, which I haven't really gotten into yet, but the movie, which honestly I thought this Megan one was better. But that's a arbitrary comparison. Let's talk about the fact that they've already greenlit a Megan 2.0. That's right. This is a Blumhouse movie, horror movie that ended off, of course, with a bit of a cliffhanger kind of situation. And they have said that, while it is a ways away and there's no exact date, they have announced that it will arrive in 2025. Plenty of time, right? Plenty of time for them to develop and shoot a sequel. Even if they had no plans to do it, they were thinking this was a one-off and it just happened to be really successful, knocking Avatar 2 off of the top spot at the box office. But they're really going to be stuck after that. If a second one does well and they want to do a third, there's already a 3 in the first title. It's Mithrigan. How you gonna do? You didn't think ahead, did you?
Thanks for listening to the Steve Reeve Podcast from 100.5 Cruise FM.
I love a lot about Conan O'Brien. I really, really do. I'm a big fan. And he has got his podcast now that he's not doing his late night talk show. But he still does a ton. But it's called Conan Needs a Friend. And on this podcast, he's also got a segment called Conan Needs a Fan. And it's where he gets to know somebody who is a fan. You can submit on the website. You could enter to be one of these guests. But he's already kind of hit the Alberta quota for a little while because he was recently talking to a woman named Jill from Vulcan, Alberta. Well, really from a farm nearby, but still close enough, right? And he was enamored with the idea of this town. This is how the conversation went. Here's just a clip from the Conan O'Brien Needs a Fan segment.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I'm from Kirk, Massachusetts, and we didn't lean into this at all. You guys are from Vulcan, and you lost your mind. When you say there's a statue of the USS Enterprise, you mean like, how big is this thing? How big are we talking?
Like huge, like maybe it's, I don't know, like 30 feet across. Like it's
God.
massive. Yeah.
Do people...
And there's a Trek Center in town. Like they'll host, they have Spock days in the summertime.
This is unbelievable to me that a town has surrendered its dignity like this. This is, I mean...
He's always such a jerk. But Conan O'Brien, talking to Jill of Vulcan, Alberta, and now the town of Vulcan, Alberta has officially invited Conan to come and check out Vulcan, which is their, Spock Days is part of the Vulcan 2023, celebrations. And he has not only been invited to visit, but he's also been invited to be the cosplay parade marshal and the costume contest judge. They say pretty much the highest honor of all time. No big deal. I hope he does. I certainly hope he does. There's a lot to learn about Vulcan, Alberta and its history. And that's not the only space association we've got with a small town as well. I mean, if you've never been to St. Paul, Alberta, there is the world's first, I'm talking not just Canada's, not just Alberta's, the world's first UFO landing pad. We're a little bit obsessed, and I am a little bit loving it. The wind phone of Deer Lake. What this is it's a phone that is not connected to a network whatsoever. It's on a nature trail at Deer Lake, and it's become a little bit infamous because of how people have come to use it. The wind phone is an invitation, basically, to talk to people who you no longer have a chance to talk to, right? Or, maybe it would be a chance to have a way to feel like you are having a direct conversation with maybe like a higher power that you believe in, whatever that may be. But for instance, people often use it to talk to relatives that are no longer with them, right? A late wife or a lost child or something of the like. It's actually a concept that came from Japan, and this is a thing that's fairly common in that country, somewhat common, right? The nature being devoid of humanity and of civilization, with suddenly a phone in the middle of it, not connected to anything. This is the very person for it. And, touching story, but also, besides being beautiful, powerful, and moving, would be a great start to a horror movie, because I've seen too many of them in my life, and the very first thing that I thought of when I heard about this story, about this wind phone phenomenon, is what if somebody did answer back, right? That's your jumping off point, and that seems terrifying to me. Lisa Marie Presley, of course, passed away. She died last week after being rushed to the hospital after what was being described as a cardiac event. And now the actual cause of death has not been released. It's in fact been deferred. The coroners requested more investigation into the cause. She was 54, and the medical emergency had her being brought to the hospital with signs of life, and then she did not survive, did not last. And this is not indicative of something, nefarious, any foul play or anything like that, but it could just mean a backup in the system. Still interesting nonetheless. More to come. Noel Gallagher is in the news again and he's in the news a lot, for Oasis not being a big thing anymore. He's still touring a lot. They still release their old music in new forms, but he was left, in his own words, gobsmacked after a girl asked him what he did for a living. He said, Google it. Look me up. I'm on there. I promise you. This was in an interview with Absolute Radio in January 17th, talking about a brand new show that's coming out. But he was still trying to socialize, running into somebody who had no idea who he was and did not exactly find it refreshing.
Friday.
I imagine people are going to be dipping into it a little bit, maybe tying one on over the weekend. It does happen on the weekly. But if you didn't hear, we were talking about it this week. Canada, the powers that be in Canada have put out a recommendation, a guideline on how to limit yourself when it comes to alcoholic consumption to stay out of high-risk categories for certain diseases, right? Heart diseases, cancer, and things like that. It's pretty serious on the tail end of things. But at the face value, they're saying 2 drinks per week is your cap if you want to stay out of those categories. 2 drinks per week is your maximum recommendation. And so I wanted to know what people thought about that. I find it surprising, but I can also understand the recommendation. And I myself don't even drink a whole lot anymore. So I'm like, yeah, doable. Easily doable, I think. For those that don't drink at all, they're like, check, gotcha, moving on. But the poll results, as unscientific as they are, came in at exactly 50-50, which I find very interesting. Polarizing is what they call that. 50-50, right down the middle. Split decision when people are saying, ridiculous or realistic. Yeah, half and half. Curious. Very, very curious. I don't know if that answer would change closer or further away from the weekend or from a big day coming up, like, I don't know, a couple months away as St. Patrick's Day. I don't know. Maybe it would change. Maybe the needle wouldn't move at all. But interesting nonetheless. Sad news hit yesterday, of course, in the world of rock and roll, the world of music. It's David Crosby, who has died now at the age of 81. No cause of death given, at least not at this time. And, maybe it won't come for some time now. But he was a man who obviously was getting up into advanced years, a lot of experience under his belt, a lot of music that he worked on, a lot of real hippie sounding stuff that I grew up on. Absolutely. We played Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young so much in my household when I was growing up, raised on that stuff. But, sad to see that he has passed away. He was never really, it's seemingly anyway, my take is that he was never really that afraid of dying. In fact, I think he knew, he was facing his mortality and he's kind of facing it with a grin. As best you can. Back in 2021, he, on a podcast, was talking about how he's not going to be around for much longer. He's growing old, and he's got a legacy that's going to be lasting beyond him. And even beyond that, just as recently as Wednesday, he was tweeting still. In fact, fans on his Twitter know that he was pretty active on there. And one of his final tweets was talking about heaven and joking around about the fact that I heard the place is overrated, cloudy, which was the irreverent outlook that I think he had pervading, his entire career, his entire life.
You're listening to the Steve Reeve Podcast from 100.5 Cruise FM.
Pink Floyd is getting ready to celebrate a big milestone. March 1st will mark the 50th anniversary of one of the greatest albums of all time, The Dark Side of the Moon. Yes, 1973 legend of an album. This is going to be coming out. The pre-orders are available right now. It actually starts to ship March 21st. Not on the 1st, but it's going to come with all kinds of remastered audio and all kinds of different formats of the album, and as well a live version of the album that's also coming with it, alongside replica 7-inch singles, a songbook, a hardcover book, an unreleased album performed, all this stuff. And more. And yeah, it costs a little bit. But you don't have to get the full box set. They're also releasing some supplementary stuff. Guns N' Roses might be at Glastonbury Festival. Maybe, just maybe. It's a far way off, so I don't know if any of us are going to have tickets to it, but they have been rumored to be playing the festival, which has only revealed one of their headliners, Elton John. And on a Sirius XM radio show, Duff McKagan was talking about the summer plans for the band, saying they do have a confirmed huge gig in Hyde Park in London. And also he added, and Glastonbury is going to be iconic, and didn't give any further explanation. So fans have extrapolated that means that they're definitely playing, but I don't know. Maybe he's just attending. Maybe he's just excited to go. I want to know what the plan is going to be for the single-use plastics ban that's going on. I mean, we've known about this in Canada for a while, and it's kind of a slow rollout, but it's in part already begun. And just reading that England now has also banned the sale of single-use plastics, very similarly on a scale, sort of going through time, so that it's not all at once and creates a big ripple effect. It's meant to be in a timeline that people can kind of get used to, but I'll admit that while I'm on board for the most part, and I realize that we just have to be, it's just a fact of the matter. You don't like it, that's okay, but we still have to take care of the planet. But putting all of the onus on what to do about saving the planet onto each and every individual instead of targeting corporations is not a great thing. Which is why this ban sort of does target giant entities instead of just you, me, and the other guy, right? But it's hard to take. I will admit, as much as I want to do my part, it is hard to take when you get your paper straw that disintegrates into nothingness inside an entirely plastic drink container that is only going to get used the one time, or you get your wooden cutlery. I'm all for it. I'm all for the wooden cutlery. That seems super sustainable, and they actually do last the entire meal, unlike the paper straws. I'm for it. They work. However, they get packaged up in the same bag as your food, which is in a plastic container. And you go, hey, but hang on. So what is the actual plan here? I think we have yet to figure it out.
Transmission over. Want more Steve? New podcast episodes happen every Friday, or just tune into the Steve Reeve Show. Weekday mornings starting at 5:30 a.m. on 100.5 Cruise FM.